Hello and welcome to Monday's episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, and if you listened to the show which was released yesterday involving myself and Tony Anderson, you know we've split up our review of the Scottish Premiership matches taking place this weekend, but we're not only splitting it into two podcasts, within the second part of the two-parter podcast, we're also splitting it up into two sections. So later on, I'm going to be joined by Craig Anderson to cover the remaining three Scottish Premiership games from the weekend, which all took place on Sunday. But firstly, joining me to discuss the game, which was live on Sky Sports, it is a very beleaguered, unhappy, frustrated, angry Gary Cocker. Gary, how's it going?
Well, the thing is, Craig, outside of my football club, things are going great. I've started going to the gym, I've started taking a little bit better care of myself because my men's mental health is at an all-time low when it comes to Dundee Football Club. Not helped at all by what transpired and what unfolded yesterday at Dens.
Yes, so this was a 3-0 victory for Rangers. 2 goals coming in the first 50 minutes through Nico Raskin and Mikey Moore, and then GD Gassama topped it off in the 90th minute. Gary, I've seen the highlights for this. I haven't seen anything else, but I have seen your manager say that you started well. You were good in the first 10 to 15 minutes. You were 2-0 down before 15 minutes.
Thank you for confirming that I have not slipped into some bizarre world where it's okay to be 2-0 down. I think what he is referring to is the fact that we got a free kick on the edge of Rangers' box 3 minutes in, and we got a shot on target. That's the only plus point. Those 2 goals were coming. They are entirely down to Steven Pressley's tactics and shape. I've been trying to think about how to structure this to make it make sense because there are just so many things wrong with what this man is doing at Dundee that I don't know where to begin. But if we take Nico Raskin's opener to begin with, he was unmarked as an understatement. He was stranded, deserted, a man at the South Pole not only in our penalty box, but in our 6-yard box. No one was marking him because we have this insane, and you would have seen it at Tynecastle last week, this insane zonal marking approach from corners, where it's very easy to obviously block someone off legally if you're doing zonal marking, and it's very easy to, because you don't have people taking responsibility. And it fell apart at Tynecastle last week. And guess what happened again? Tavernier whips in the ball. Raskin is just able to pick his spot. And as I said, I can sort of see a little bit where Pressley thought, we came out of the blocks looking like we were maybe going to do something. But then that happened, and that followed a good bit of pressure and was then followed by even more pressure down both sides, where we were playing a 3-4-3, and I think one of the other things that was picked up was Clark Robinson's injured, so he's sort of the middle of the back three, so I had to shift around a little bit. So it was, I think Luke Graham was put in there, and we had Billy Cometio at left centre back. I'm not a big fan of Cometio, but that's by the by, and he probably of the three had the best game, but that's, it's all relative. But the more maddening thing was that Simon Murray was dropped for Emile Aqua. And we would come on to this in a bit more detail. But just to be clear, Simon Murray wasn't injured. When I saw that initially, I thought he's either injured or he's fatigued and they think he can only manage half an hour. It was a tactical decision. It was a deliberate decision to play Emile Aqua, who we have paid apparently £33,000 for up front. And with add-ons, that could go up to 100 grand.
At least that's safe to say that's unlikely to happen, whatever these add-ons are. Unless the add-ons are literally play one more match.
And he is... The reason we signed him is that Steven Pressley's son played alongside him at Barrow last year. So Steven saw a lot of him and rated him. So there's another mark against the judgment. But no, then the second goal was just... I think it was Ethan Hamilton I say robbed. Robbed suggests that it was unfair. He gave up possession on basically the edge of our penalty box, and Mikey Moore just had to slot it away. And from that point, it never looked like Rangers were going to do anything other than trot out what Ewan Taylor likes to call a professional performance and a professional win. Rangers themselves looked markedly different, and this isn't news to anyone that listens to the podcast. Comparing their performance at Dens to the performance that they had against us at Ibrox, where we were very unfortunate to be cheated out of a win by a late penalty decision. It's the passing for passing's sake that Russell Martin had has gone, and they want to move the ball very, very quickly, and that was our downfall throughout the game, was that because Rangers were so keen on just those sort of like little flicks around the corner and getting it moving quickly, that initial 3-4-3 setup was appalling for because Mari Samuels and Dre Wright just could not cope. Didn't really know what to do, so we switched to a back four, sort of a 4-1-4-1. But by that point, the damage had been done, and you've seen Steven Pressley in the press saying, "Oh, there's lots of heart to take from it. There's this, there's that," and there is nothing to take from it, Craig. I will very quickly at some point dig out some of the statistics that George Crabb, the Courier, has picked up on for Dundee under Pressley. But on basically any metric that means anything positive, we are either rock bottom or we are 11th.
Yeah,
and I can't believe I'm cheering being 11th for like one metric of advanced statistics, but that's the position I'm left in now.
Yeah, there was the article that I wrote last month, which did cover some of that, with in terms of worst in the league, in terms of expected goals, fewest shots, I think maybe like second lowest possession. The one that back then that really stood out was, so again, this is last month, but I'm certain that Dundee are still bottom of this, and bottom by a distance in terms of touches. Yeah, because at the time you'd done it only 73 times through the first 8 games. Only Killie were the only other team in the league who were less than 100, and they were on 97. I wonder whether you've even actually reached 100 by now.
No, and they've expanded. They've had 60, at the last count, they had 65 more touches in the opposition box than Dundee, almost double. It's just baffling. And the thing is, there's little to analyse from the game in terms of just, it's a Rangers team that now looks far more, at the very least, Danny Rose got them performing as they should. So, he's already got as many points from his time in charge as Russell Martin got from his time in charge. And you can see that they're going to, continue to climb the league and, at least address the points gap with everybody else. But there's not too much to learn from them other than the fact that Miovski and Chermtiti were both nothing. They didn't offer anything in the game at all. For Dundee, it's difficult to see a way out of this, certainly with Steven Pressley in charge.
But he's told the fans you need to temper your expectations, because don't get all giddy about the fact that he's on 11th, 1 point off the bottom.
The thing is, Craig, my expectations are relegations. I don't know what he's expecting me to lower my expectations to. But the thing
lower your expectation that it's just going to be one relegation and it's not going to be 2 in a row.
Well, we might get a points deduction too, you never know. No, the more the time goes on, the more that result against Celtic just looks absolutely barking mad, and will be forever a stain on Brendan Rodgers' managerial career, because there is just nothing about this side at all. You saw John McCracken had a pretty good game. He made several pretty brilliant stops to keep it at 3. But he's out of contract at the end of the season, and I've just seen today that he has a new agent, or new image rights agent. He's not going to be hanging around. And even then, it's, I know he's been brought into the Scotland setup this season, but he's still, he still has peaks and troughs. Beyond that, you're then looking at the fact that Emil Aqua's got another 2.5 years to run on his deal. He signed a 3-year deal. You go through all the other players that were brought in. Tony Yogan. Can he beat a man? Yes. Can he cross the ball? No. The number of times that he managed to get past Tavernier in the first half or second half, during the game, and then he put in it was low, slow daisy cutters, and we're just like, all right, this is fine. We'll just easily get rid of this. It feels to me as if the players are beginning to you can see, as much as there's been talk about, oh, they love training. And to be honest, I don't care if players love training. I'd rather that they loved winning or, performing on a Saturday or a Sunday. But this international break feels like it should be the right time to get rid of Pressley because it's not working. The squad, I mean, this is Groundhog Day because I've covered this before, but this squad is a bottom six squad. I don't think it's a finishing 12th squad, but I think that whether it's the zonal marking at corners, whether it's the incredibly passive, and it's not just in terms of, I think on average we've had 36% possession this season, which is definitely the lowest in the league. But we always set off teams. You could see for pretty much every Rangers chance, no one was going and closing down their men. They were all back, they were all walking backwards, which is what I do when I take my 4-year-old to swimming. You do that in the pool, but you don't do it on the football pitch when you're trying to stop someone scoring a goal. There's no flair, no creativity. If Cameron Congreve takes a really bad injury, and there was a point in the first half when I think it was Cornelius left a sort of hanging foot in, connected with his knee, and I had my head in my hands because I thought, if he's gone, this is it. And he's a 21-year-old low knee from Swansea, and he is about the only grain of hope that I've got. But basically, we've got nothing until Steven Pressley goes. But even when he goes, the issue is that he was brought in at the same time, or roughly the same time as David Longwell, who used to be at St Mirren. There's a lot of suggestions that a lot of the ideas and tactics sort of come from a collegiate approach with Longwell. So if Longwell's still there, it's still going to be the same thing that we're seeing. But as you say, it's, this idea that, we should temper our expectations. We have no expectations. Tony Docherty was sacked because, and it was stated publicly, he did not achieve top six. He got a bit close, but not that close to achieving top six. So why, if you're sacking him, do you bring in Steven Pressley? You bring in a whole bunch of duds, and then when you're sitting 11th after a full round of games and change, and you've got an international break, there's no suggestion that he's going to be gone anytime soon. Answers on a postcard.
A few things to unpack there. I'm not sure that you do have a squad that's any better than relegation, to be honest. Now, I think you could say on paper it's better than Livingston's team. Livingston have a better manager, but your team is probably better, I would say, in terms of top flight pedigree. You could say the same about Falkirk because they were in League One a lot of these players not that long ago, but they have looked pretty good this season. But that's maybe just due to a manager getting the most out of them. Kelly, I think there's an argument to be made there. I think on paper, Kelly's the squad is stronger than Dundee's, I have to say. So I still think you're fighting in the bottom three, even with another manager coming in, even if he's able to have his own say on how this team plays. But yeah, it's hard to tell because there's guys in this team, like you say, like
Amari Samuels.
Well, he's just rubbish.
Yeah.
I was going to say guys like maybe like Digby or like Aqua or Jogain or some of the other kind of summer signings. So you're like, well, maybe they are good. Maybe they are good, and they've just not had the chance to play under a manager who's capable of getting the best out of them. But for what we've seen so far for these guys that you brought in the summer, yeah, I think you've got a bottom three squad as well. So I think you might need a change of manager to get yourself 10th.
But it's also getting a change of manager who then can do something in the January transfer market, because looking at it, I think the best approach we can have is probably a 4-2-3-1, which would require getting a new left back, and that's a new starting left back because we have Amari Samuels and no one else. So a new left back, a new starting right back, because Dre Wright's all right, but he's sort of he's at the wrong end of his career. He was probably one of the better-ish performers yesterday, but he's a guy who's played in pretty much every position on the park except in goal. So you maybe want someone whose bread and butter is right back. You can play that Digby and Hamilton as the two. Obviously, you've got Simon Murray up top, but you want one of the other forwards to step up and take responsibility. I can't see Aqua doing it. Ashley Hayes looked lively, but he's not scored. He's a bit of a pest. But you wouldn't put it beyond that. So yeah, new left back, new right back, someone who can properly challenge Simon Murray, or help Simon Murray actually get a bit of a rest.
On the subject of Simon Murray, do you think there's any chance that he was dropped after his tantrum, like at Tynecastle last week?
The public position of Steven Pressley is, I wanted a physical presence up against Rangers to unsettle their defence. Emil Aqua didn't do that. He's a physical presence. He's 6'3". He's a big laddie. But he did not, he never put Suter or Cornelius under any pressure, on the ball or off the ball. He sat off them, and that's something that we've seen from Aqua whenever he's played, is that despite his size, he is not someone who's there to harass centre-backs. He plays more like someone that's 4 inches shorter. But I think it is that, because you saw, like, when Simon Murray came on, it was a half chance, but he did at least have a shot on target. Yay. Which was pretty easily held by Butland, although he actually looked like he was fumbling it a bit. But, if Simon Murray is just getting up to speed now, and especially with this international break coming, he should have been starting if he was able to start. And that's why my automatic assumption was he's got some sort of, ongoing issue. But apparently it was a tactical decision. You never know what things are actually like behind the scenes. But I refuse to believe that, as much as it's a young squad, as much as Presley's brought a lot of them in, I refuse to believe that they're not looking at this situation and going, it's someone new's going to come in sooner or later. Unfortunately for me, I think it's going to be later. And yeah, it's not looking great down Dens Parkway, Craig.
Certainly not. So we should probably say a little bit more about Rangers before we finish.
Yeah.
3 subs at half time for a team that's winning 2-0. Was that just them taking the piss basically and saying, like, this game's finished, let's do some rotation?
It was 100%. I think Danny Rowell wanted to see a little bit more out of his players. There was also the funny little subplot of Lyle Cameron as well, who I think Danny Rowell had been asked about him in midweek, and he said, he's still here, but it's like anyone, he's got to prove himself and find the spots. He found his way onto the bench, and it looked like he was going to come on. He was stripped and getting ready to come on. He was getting pelters from the crowd, and then Cornelius picked up an injury and had to come off. So then Lyle Cameron didn't go on in this place. So he was told to sit back down on the bench. That was the highlight of the day. Which is absolutely pathetic. But that's the position I'm in. But no, I think with Rangers, it was definitely just a case of Danny Rowell wanted to see how people look. Maybe Diomande, I don't think, had his best half of football. He was the one that gave away the free kick that Ethan Hamilton had. It was a needless free kick to give away on the edge of the box at the start of the game. And you never know if Dundee go 1-0 up there. Could we potentially defend that? I don't know, because our defence has fallen apart. But yeah, I do wonder if that was maybe a factor there. But I think you could definitely see, Danny Rowell still trying to figure out what to do with this Rangers team. There's still definitely the potential for better sides than Dundee to rile them up. But I think their next 2 games are Livy and Falkirk at home, if I remember correctly. So I think he'll have a couple more, at least on paper, easier ties to sort of continue to figure things out. Probably pasted in Europe in midweek as well, and then he'll have a happy January, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're right. They've got Livingston and Falkirk, then Dundee United away, then Killie away. So the Dundee United away is a tricky fixture there. But the other ones, we'd be too surprised considering Rangers this season if Livingston or Falkirk managed to get something at Ibrox. But yeah, they're certainly starting to get a bit of momentum going now, and have stopped being quite so much of a laughingstock. Similar to every Scottish club in Europe, they're still a laughingstock on the continent. But in domestic terms, three victories in a row in the league, and then obviously lost to Celtic in that cup semi-final. But if you're looking at drawing a line under what happened with Russell Martin, and then just looking at it through Danny Rowell and looking forward, you would still kind of, it's obviously not positive to lose to your arch rivals in a semi-final, but having gone down to 10 men for the majority of it and how they kind of responded to that, there is enough to suggest that Rangers will at least not finish, 5th this season. So it's kind of looking like might happen if Russell Martin stayed for the majority.
There is, as ever, in Scottish football, there was one moment of what would have been controversy if it was a tight game, which was the VAR call
Mm-hmm.
that saw a third in the first half for Rangers ruled out. I thought they were looking at an offside for Mikey Moore, who pokes the ball away. Essentially, it's a worked corner. The ball breaks to, I can't remember who it was on the edge of the box, but whoever it was, they took a shot, went through Diomande's legs. We'll come back to that. McCracken saved it, but then Mikey Moore was there to sort of pick up the rebound and slot it home. I don't think it should have been disallowed.
Oh no, definitely. Diomande steps over the ball.
Yeah,
and you can see that McCracken before the shot's even taken, you can see that McCracken's trying to see through the bodies, and Diomande might be one of those. No, it was the right decision. You step over the ball, you're interfering with play.
Yeah, but it's because McCracken made the save. But admittedly, then the save still.
You're turning us a Mirren fan here, Gary. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, I did think it was because of Mikey Moore. And looking back at the sort of the highlights,
Mikey Moore does actually look. He looks offside to me.
So they've disallowed it for something. It might not be the right thing.
Well, if the ref went over, it would be for the Diomande stepping over it. And I think that was fair enough. He's in the goalie's eye line. He steps over the ball, for Christ's sake. He's definitely interfering with play.
Yeah, but I can tell you that the lines that they were drawing, it was a funny angle. No one Dens like it do. They picked a strange angle to draw them up. But
no, well,
it didn't change a thing, Craig. So who cares?
It's been a weekend of funny angles. When it comes to drawing VR lines, anyway. Right, Gary, I think that'll do us for now. Thank you very much for joining me.
No worries.
And now welcome on to the podcast to talk through the remaining 3 Premiership games. It is Craig Anderson. Craig, how's it going?
Not too badly. Just football aside, life going reasonably well, but I enjoying being on the Monday podcast a wee bit more recently, frequently just now, but not generally enjoying what I have to talk about on them.
Yeah, you weren't entirely happy when I told you were needed on this one. So it was a game after your team was playing away at Celtic, but that's Killie now, I think 5 successive defeats. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In the Scottish Premiership now. So yeah, this game was kind of a hiding it in nothing. You've got a lot of injury issues. You've got problems at goalkeeper. You're not in great form. Celtic have domestically at least got their tails up a little bit after Brendan Rodgers was replaced by Martin O'Neill, and we'll talk about them later on. But continue with the theme of this podcast. It is, you are a fan of a team after Gary was on moaning about Dundee getting beat by Rangers. You're not quite as bad as him, but things aren't going very well for Killie at this point in time. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think that this was as you alluded to there, I knew we were going to lose, and losing at Celtic Park's not. I think Killie have won there once in 70 years or something, so losing at Celtic Park, not really a surprise. Getting beat 4-0, not really a surprise even, to be honest, but I think the nature of it was still worrying in a sense because the shape, the setup of the team was a complete shambles, and the goalkeeping situation was very apparently an issue. And the thing is with this Celtic team, they are fragile, and regardless of they've won every domestic game since O'Neill came back. They got absolutely done in Denmark in midweek.
Mm-hmm.
So they are there to be got at, and there was a couple of instances where Killie got in behind them really easily. Like the one good thing Eddie Beach did in the game, he just pinged a ball over the top kind of quickly for Anderson, and he got in behind and hit the bar. I think he might have been offside anyway, but it would have been tight. But it was so they were there to be got at, and we never really laid a finger on them, to be honest. And it's one of those disappointing ones. And maybe if you hold on a little bit longer, the fans got on their back and all that. But I was going to say you can't legislate for defensive mistakes. You can legislate when it's the same people making them, but also at the same time, you mentioned the injury issues. We've got what we've got in terms of senior centre backs just now. Paul Lewis Mayo, hopefully he's not too far away. But yeah, it was a really disappointing goal to lose as well, like messy as fuck.
So a couple of things there. So you talked about the shape not being the right setup for this kind of game. What was your issues with how Kettlewell set up? Was it is it right in saying that the sports scene and on I've got it in front of me on Soccerway as well, was it a 3-5-2?
Tiffany was playing kind of off Anderson. It's not even so much the system, because I don't mind the system, but just organisation wasn't there. Like the defence was all over the shop. To be fair, I think I'm right in saying it might be the first time this 3 have played together. If it's not, I can't remember if they played the last game as well. And it does have Dees is the only one with any top flight experience prior to this season. Like obviously Stanger played a handful of games with Hamilton, but years ago. And Williams is coming in on loan, not had a pre-season. Bit of a weird situation with him in terms of he was out of contract at whatever shit English team he was at, Crewe. He was out of contract at Crewe, but didn't want to sign a new one. But if anyone signed him, they would have to pay compensation. So he's basically, for whatever reason, signed a year's deal with Crewe, but spent it coming on loan to us. So I guess it's a shop window situation or whatever it is. I don't know who benefits or whatever it is, but a guy so he's not up to speed with Scottish football. He's a Welsh under 21. He actually played most weeks for Crewe, so he's like fairly promising, but not seen a lot to know about him yet either. And so it was a bit thrown together. The fullbacks positions, I don't rate either of the two that played. And then you've got a midfield in front of them that has got out of form player in Brad Lyons himself, the captain. All of that just makes it like organisationally pretty poor. So even though I didn't really have an issue with this selection because there's not a lot else there to select, Brannan's on the bench, which doesn't make sense to me, but I can understand it for a game at Celtic Park as well. But it's organisation in the way they're set up, which to me is one of the things Kettlewell's typically been all right at, which is setting up a very, very boring team, but a team that isn't going to get ripped apart, but they kind of were.
What's the kind of supporter sentiment around Kettlewell at this point in time? How are you kind of thinking about Kettlewell? Is it a sense that he's like the injury issues have been what they are, and because of that, there's not too much that could be done?
Nah. I think the honeymoon period, if there was one, is well and truly gone. To be honest, I was one of the more negative ones about the appointment. I think it was a negative reaction in general. I was pretty negative about it, but I then kind of mellowed, not to the appointment, which I still think was nonsense, but felt he was starting to assemble something all right. Like the business I thought was decent enough, and the team was fine in the first few weeks, but I think I've not swung as much in the negative diet. Like I'm still kind of sitting where I was when we appointed him, and lots of people have gone from like super positive to super negative, but I think there's 2 home games coming up after the internationals, and if we don't do well in the first one, the second one will be the sort of toxic scenes that saw him driven out of Motherwell already. And I think the reason you mentioned injuries, which is fair enough, with some of them have been unlucky, like Daniel's getting injured in international duty, you can't really legislate for that.
Yeah.
And Striek having a heart condition or allegedly, or whatever it may be, you can't see that coming, and that's nothing to do with what the manager does with the players. But players like Jamie Brandon, he's injury prone, so you're taking a risk when you sign him. And the goalkeeper situation is 100% of his own making, because he's the one who made the decision to run with Striek, very much a solid goal, like a good goalkeeper for the level Killer wanting to be at. So no issue with that signing, but not having any sort of backup. I am very much of the opinion you need to have a competent backup, and that usually means an older goalkeeper who is not as bothered about being a first choice anymore, but he's went with a young guy, and that can only work if the young guy is good. We had Robbie McCrory at the club. Say what you want about Robbie McCrory, he's clearly a better goalkeeper than Eddie Beach. That was without question, and that's presumably a financial decision to ship him off, but it's too important a position to be doing that. If you want to make a financial decision, don't sign Dominic Thompson, don't sign James Brown, just use what you've got in the building for those positions and focus your attention on making sure you've got a good second choice keeper. Then what happens is you get in this boat, Striek is out presumably until maybe March or something, at least. It depends what obviously the prognosis of everything is for him, and we're stuck, and you then have to hope that Beach has got something about him. But the first time I clapped eyes on him was pre-season against Dundee United, wasn't sure then, and we've seen enough from him even before he was playing. Like he he played for the B team in one of the Challenge Cup games and got, I guess, like, was it Edinburgh City maybe? And he got sent off after 5 minutes, just stuff like that. You're like, all right, this guy is just not going to be it. And I think I would be confident in saying, and I do include Colin Doyle in this, that he is the worst, visually worst goalkeeper I've ever seen playing for us. 3 of those goals, I will say it is not really down to him. Not directly down to him, the first goal. Each of the other 3 goals look awful. Like Kieran Tierney's goal, that ball doesn't go into the corner. The one after that, they're all like diving past him on the side that he's at. And it's like, what? It's really, really bad. And I saw people saying or criticising the decision to take him out of the team after the Hearts and Rangers defeats and bring in, he obviously brought in Oluwanyemi on loan from Celtic. Mm-hmm. Saying, well, why did you dent his confidence like that? Regardless of the big Celtic guys' abilities or not, and you know, not necessarily up to much himself. He's a mile better than Beach is, and you know, was playing regularly in the Championship last season. Fine, he wasn't playing well regularly, he was playing mostly all right. It's still a massive step up, but obviously we couldn't play him yesterday because he's, well, I'll say he's on loan from Celtic. He's not on loan from Celtic at the moment because it's a 7-day rolling thing, so he's probably back at Celtic. Who knows what's happening. We can't sustain that until Christmas. They need to sign a goalkeeper. They need to go out and find someone. And who are you getting in November for 2 months? I don't know, but there must be someone out there. And then the first thing, unless Striek is going to be back, the first thing you have to do on the 1st of January is have a goalkeeper that's ready to be there for the rest of the season, because that is everything else, bad form, players getting injured, like the defence being a bit disorganised and stuff. You work your way through that, and teams have shit spells, and I still will, if we get a goalkeeper in, don't think we'll end up going down. But you can't work your way through having a shit goalkeeper. That feeds into the rest. The defensive performances have gone to shit since Striek went out. I don't think that's coincidental. Mm-hmm. Because you said 5 defeats in a row. That was immediately after he's not been in the team.
Yeah.
And everything else flows from that. So you just that's fully on Kettlewell. He's a manager. He made the decision. That was how he wanted to allocate the budget, and it's blown up in his face. And I find he's not really taking ownership of that. For a guy that talks for 15 minutes, I mean, coming from me, who never shuts the fuck up either, a man who just goes on in every interview, but is kind of not addressing his own failings in that position.
Before we move on, anything to be said for Celtic from this game?
I don't think they were even that good. I don't think they had to be. Like, as I said, there was a couple of times they could have been got at. The goals they scored were handed to them. To me it was a pretty rudimentary Celtic Sunday afternoon home performance. They more than did enough to win the game. There were some individual performances that looked all right, but also aspects that you still would worry about. Maida doesn't look like he wants to be there. Kenny, I can't decide. Is he got it to be the striker for Celtic? He scores a goal, but it's not exactly a very good one. Defensively, Simpson Pussy was playing, but who knows? He wasn't tested really. So it's an afternoon where I don't think they really learn as much as they would learn from the previous 2 games against Rangers in Midgetland, where I think there were some glaring issues highlighted.
It's 2 consecutive Scottish Premiership games where they've won 4-0, and that's the biggest victory. Their ties their biggest victory of the season. They've also done it in the League Cup against Partick Thistle, but against Premiership opposition, that's their biggest victory, and then they've repeated it the following game. I think it's with the highlights of this one, I didn't watch the game, but with the highlights, you can see there was a number of Celtic opportunities. It was all basically Celtic opportunities, the highlights on Sports Scene. And you can say that they are appearing to kind of move with a bit more urgency. throughout the field, and
couldn't have
especially
been less urgent.
in the attack. So there is an improvement from Brendan Rodgers' days, but really, before you're and Celtic have got to hold off on this. They've really, before they make any decision on whether O'Neill's staying, because there's kind of building momentum, or at least there was before the Midtjylland game, build the momentum of O'Neill staying for the rest of the season, and then they can take their time over appointing a new manager. I mean, to me, that's just an absolute dereliction of duty if they're having to do that. Like, you should have names lined up, and unless it's somebody that you absolutely love and is not going to come until the end of the season because they don't want to join midway through a campaign, or they're at another club and they want to see out their contract or see out the 2025-26 term, then there's maybe factors at play there that are stopping them from doing it. But there should be a huge, healthy list ready as soon as Rodgers walked out the door of bringing somebody else in who's a long-term solution. And there's still not the evidence, I think, to make the case for O'Neill just yet. But if they follow this up by winning convincingly at St Mirren, and then I don't know what games they've got after that. Let me just have a look. Maybe show it a bit more in Europe than they've done so far. They are away to Feyenoord. They've got Hibs. So they've got away to St Mirren, away to Hibs. Right, you come through those two, and at least one of them is pretty comfortable. Then I think, okay, fair enough. O'Neill with Maloney and the rest of the new backroom staff they've brought in have shown that they've got enough to get Celtic to, 85 points, and that'll be enough to win the league, probably comfortably, at least by a couple of victories. So could they do that? But definitely wait and see. If I'm Celtic, I'm not just going to give them the job now and say, that's it, wipe my hands. We don't have to think about it for a while yet, but it's the Celtic board, so you never know if they might actually do that, but they would be mad to do so. Right, shall we move on? Let's move on actually to the team that Celtic are still chasing in the Scottish Premiership title race, and that is Hearts. The gap is down to 7 points, with Celtic holding a game in hand, which will reduce it to 4 after Hearts could only draw 1 each at home with Dundee United. Craig, I was there for this one, and even if Hearts, so say that the very last kick of the game, instead of chipping the ball into the keeper's hands for some reason, Kizarides had bent it into the far corner, or he'd crossed it and somebody had managed to, Kabangu or somebody had managed to force it home, I would have still been sitting here off the back of what would have been another kind of injury time winner, and I would have still, even with 3 points in the bag, I would have felt a lot less confident about Hearts' sustainability in terms of the title race after seeing this match, because I just didn't think Hearts were impressive whatsoever in this one.
But I mean, and this is to me what I was talking about with the Celtic game and the win over Celtic, and what it did is it bought Hearts a buffer. It bought Hearts. I don't think anyone is going to sit down and say Hearts were going to keep winning every single game until the end of the season. It simply wasn't going to happen. But what you achieved by beating Celtic and building that gap up to the size that it was at that stage is it's meant that you have been able to draw 2 of the 3 games since then, and still, even if they win that game in hand, still have a 4-point gap, still have more than a game. So you're right in a sense that I think to be cautious about the form turning downwards, but at the same time, my thought is always you're even say you lose 2 games in a row and Celtic go back ahead, it's not like it's gone. So that's the thing that I think is worth kind of clinging on to from that perspective. I think the signs are a bit more ominous now of what always happening yet again, but you can write sometimes these games off to kind of bad days at the office. I got the impression it was just generally a fairly poor game, in the sense that nobody was chance creation wise, nobody was really creating very much. There might have been a lot of midfield stuff going on, but you didn't lose. You're still unbeaten. There could have been a worse outcome with if any of the 3 goals that Dundee United scored that were offside weren't miles offside.
Yeah, I think it's just so since the Celtic game, I've looked for the performances Like, that's after Celtic game, that was when you had to say, right, let's take this seriously. Can Hearts actually win the title this season? And I think since then, you've had away to St Mirren and you've had home to Dundee United. Yeah, comfortably beat Dundee in between. Not the greatest of performances before going ahead, but then that was kind of a mark of a good team. You don't play well, but then you get yourselves in front and then you just run up the score. That is the mark of a team that can win a title. But I think just in terms of general performance, second half in St Mirren before the last 15 and just the entire game against Dundee United, you're wanting to see, like, say this, it'd still finish one each, but Hearts had missed loads of chances and the Dundee United keeper had a great game, something along those lines. I would be a different mindset, but I'm just kind of looking at that and thinking, yeah, I'm not sure this team is good enough to get to even to get to 80 points and then you're still needing Celtic or Rangers to have down years, which is happening to this point, but you're still looking at Celtic's kind of tally, what is it? So 7 points from 23 games. Sorry, 23 points from 7 games so far. And then you extrapolate that across the rest of the campaign and they could still bring in, a proper manager. I was trying to figure out what it was there quickly, but I've seemed to have done something wrong with my mathematics here. So I was 23 divided by, it's because it's not 7 games, is it? It's 11 games. Yeah. 23 divided by 11 times
still
38.
2 points a game.
79. So currently Celtic are due to finish on 79 points without them really improving on what we've seen so far this season, which is still in play, but I'm kind of talking myself in circles here. I was a bit negative after this one. There's been a lot of Hearts fans, to be fair. I'm maybe being too negative because I just kind of maybe allowed myself to dream a little bit. Whereas there's a lot of Hearts fans, it's not the end of the world. As you were saying, they've still got the buffer of even if Celtic win their game in hand, it goes down to 4 points. And even if Hearts lose their next 2 games after that, away to Aberdeen and away to Celtic, that's not the next 2, but those are 2 coming up. If they lose those 2 and that means Celtic go back ahead, you're still into December time and you're still thinking, right, let's dust ourselves off. Let's wait and see if this isn't a great Celtic side. They are going to drop more points. But, yeah, there's focus on the fact that if you look at what Hearts were last season, I think after 12 games last season, Hearts had 9 points or something. So it's night and day, and it's a long journey. This is only the start of the Tory Bloom era. But I couldn't help but get a bit excited just due to the fact that how poor Celtic and Rangers looked this campaign and whether this was the time to do it. And you said it was a shame for Hearts, so this hasn't come 3 or 4 years into the Bloom cycle. I think it's a shame when it's come when Hearts don't have a functioning right side of their team. Because if I think Hearts the right side of the field was as strong as some of the rest of it, then yeah, maybe you would be in a place where they've got a couple of extra victories and you're maybe thinking, bloody hell, this could and might actually happen. But this really cooled my expectations. But I'd love to be proven wrong with what comes next. But I think you're now starting to see a team that's more likely to finish. I mean, it's still a 12-point gap on Rangers, but if Rangers are starting to put together a run of results and could pull something out with that squad, I'm starting to look at this Hearts team and thinking, this is just a very good, best of the rest team. Whether that's second, whether that's third in this campaign, it's kind of irrelevant because of the fact there's no Champions League place. But yeah, I can't help but feel a bit pessimistic after that performance.
Second place is still the qualifiers for the Champions League, right?
No, I don't think so. I don't think next season.
I'm sure it was. I think we've just lost Europa League spot, so we've only got 1 Europa League and 2 Conference League and 2 Champions League. That's what I thought was the case.
You might be right. But
I think they go in quite early in the Champions League. But
yeah, I mean, I think the only one that's guaranteed group stage football in Europe is the Champions, because they go into the qualifier. They go to the playoff round of the Champions League.
Second qualifying round is where you would go for the Champions League. So
okay. I actually didn't realise that. So yeah, okay, right. There you go. There's something to still shoot for. But to get onto the game itself, Derek McInnes scored with kind of 4-2-4 to start with, and it was kind of right. Kabori scored twice against Dundee after a very impressive cameo performance off the bench against St Mirren. Can see why he's continued with him in the team, but also brought back Braga because Braga's one of our best players. But you need to kind of make these tough calls. Kabori on the right of midfield didn't look good there against St Mirren early in the season. Didn't look good there against Motherwell. You didn't even see him again for weeks, months, until after that game. That was kind of how poor he was in those contests. He looks really like he's a forward that plays like good around the penalty area with a bit of pace, a bit of kind of chaos about him. In the final third, he doesn't look like somebody that can play on the flank, and this is another example of that. Behind him, Oisin McEntee was really poor. And he has, for somebody that's been put into the right back slot to be a kind of steady presence there, where Hearts, for whatever reason, McInnes doesn't seem to fancy Borchevink, the right back that was signed to play there. But for McEntee playing in that position, he's not even like it's not even like when you usually play like a centre-half at right back, where it's like, right, they're not doing much going forward, but what they are doing is they're being a steady presence. Like, he's had steady games, but he's also had games like the Celtic match at Tynecastle recently, and like this one, where he's just been really poor, like even defensively. Like, he's been a weak link, and it was no surprise to see him taken off at half-time, and that's an experiment that probably has to end. And also, into the second half, it took off Kabore, probably the right decision, but then they put Harry Milne back at right midfield. And I was like, right, okay, we've seen this experiment. We know that had a shelf life. And again, surprisingly, that didn't work either. So there was things that McInnes did in this match that could have had Hearts played better. That said, I don't know how much you can, plan when Kizaridis, Shankland are going to play as poorly as they did. You lose Benny Beningame on the Friday before the game in training. He'll be out for a number of weeks. And there was just, other than Cammy Devlin, who was just superb again, very few players in Maroon held up to the standards that they've put in this season.
And I think you talked about tactically getting it wrong, and I looked at that team and I thought, what the fuck are you playing at? But I've seen it before where he obviously likes his forward players, and it's like he tries to shoehorn them in. The shades of Greg Stewart at Aberdeen probably there with that part of it. But maybe if you get to half time and he can fix it from a winning position, it might have gone very differently. But
yeah,
obviously you can see that goal, and it's a pretty poor goal to lose, I felt, on half time. It wasn't clear from the highlights. I think this is not the case, but because it didn't go out that side, because they showed the chance in the SPFL highlights immediately before the goal, which cannons off Swallow. Like, he came out and won the ball and hit it off the attacker and it went out. And they showed it like 2 or 3 times for some reason, even though it felt like a nothing chance. And then the next clip was Dundee United taking a corner where it clearly the incident should have been a goal kick. But that, I don't think they were related incidents. I was just confused as to why it was shown so often in the SPFL highlights for what I felt was a nothing chance. But anyway, just checking on that. But yeah, I felt it wasn't a good goal to concede defensively, and especially at the time in the game where you have had, as I say, a poor 45. If you go in 1-0 up, it makes a big difference from that respect. The goal Hart scored, even talking about the poor performance, is like such a, it seems to be a wee bit of a theme at the moment, like badly worked free kicks or set pieces somehow turning into goals. Anyway, I'm thinking of Ryan Christie's goal against Greece. There's no way that's what they were trying to do, because everything was so slow and clumsy, and even the shot from Kizaridis, to me, that's a goalkeeping error. I don't think he should let it pass. It's not his fault. It bounces off the post and comes back in off him, but I don't think he should be letting that pass him in the first place. It's like, it felt like he didn't get down fast enough. So it was a bit of a calamity of errors, but I feel like it could have been a very different game if they'd got in. But after that, it looked like in the second half, if anybody was more likely to score, it potentially was United as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Hearts just kind of huffed and puffed, but didn't create anything. To be fair, United didn't create anything either, apart from scoring 3 times, but they were all offside.
They were very offside, yeah.
Yeah, and if we were playing without kind of VAR, they would have been all flagged, because they were all given. There wasn't like any were goals and then were disallowed thanks to VAR. They were all given as offside initially. So if we didn't have VAR, then the ball wouldn't have ended up in the back of the net. Other than the Sapsford one right at the end, like you're right in saying he was a mile offside for that one. So they didn't create anything other than the goal. Hearts didn't really create anything at all, because the goal's not really what you would call a chance. And it was just a kind of pretty poor game of football, but fair play to United, who United fans have said this. I had Callum Bell on the podcast recently on the Patreon talking about United, him saying that he feels like, I find them a weird team to kind of expect what's going to happen from one week to the next. And it's down to the fact that they can play very well, and they seem to do so when they are not the favourites. So either at home or away. But when the onus is on them to go and try and break down an opponent, they seem to struggle a bit more. And this was a game that kind of showed that off, that, yeah, United, like I say, didn't, other than the disallowed goals and the set piece that they scored from, didn't create an awful lot. But they did look more threatening. They did get in. I think that was the thing with Hearts, where you got to be disappointed in that when your opponent comes and plays a 3-4-3 and you line up in basically a 4-2-4, what you're wanting to happen is you're wanting your front four to attack the spaces between wing back and right or left sided centre half. Whereas that wasn't happening at all. Dundee United were very organised in their defensive shape, didn't really let Hearts do anything in an attacking sense for most of the game. Both wing backs thought were very good, Stevenson and Namo. Namo playing on his weaker side. It was kind of going inverted at times and helping at the midfield, and didn't really let anything go down his flank. He had a very good game. Kerestays, he continued his great start of the season. But down the other end, it was actually the Dundee United attackers and wide players, especially Fata, who was making use of the space in between the Hearts centre-halves and full-backs. So what Hearts would have looked at before and said, okay, this is how we can exploit them. Let's get guys down the wing. Let's get into these areas where we can find holes in their shape. That didn't happen, but United managed to do that to Hearts. And Fata, if he'd had his shooting boots on, like, none of them were real clear-cut chances, but there was opportunities where, final pass, final shot wasn't quite there. Had it been, then this could have easily been a victory for the visitors. And Sapsford as well was another one who up front was always a bit of a danger, but just couldn't quite time his runs.
I wanted to also mention, I thought Seve plays a really big part in the goal, actually. He kind of makes a run to deceive the goalkeeper, like right in front of him, and kind of gets there. And I thought it was worth pointing that out, because he gets zero credit for it, because it's not like an assist or anything like that. But I think his movement is the part that causes the keeper not to save it.
And let's go to our final match, which was Aberdeen 1, Motherwell 1. This was goals coupled in the space of 3 second-half minutes. Jesper Karlsson opened the score for Aberdeen just after the hour mark, and then Elijah just equalised 3 minutes later. Both these goals quite notable in terms of this match. Start with the Aberdeen one. I think this just kind of sums up. There was a lot of this game that summed up Motherwell, as I feel we've seen quite often recently. So they dominated a lot of this match in terms of possession and territory, especially the first 30 minutes. Like, Aberdeen done nothing in that time, and it was really Motherwell who were just constantly, asking questions about the back. But Motherwell are a team that, for all their territory and possession in the opponent's half, they don't really show their teeth as much as you would kind of like, and they don't take as many. I don't know if it's maybe not taking as many chances, or they're just not able to move the ball. The triangles and the way in which they impressively move the ball from back to front to get into good areas, it seems to evaporate in the final third. Obviously, there's less space in which to manoeuvre, but they still look like they've yet to figure that out, where they're creating with enough consistently that they should do, considering how much they've got of the ball, how much they've got of territory, and how much they're impressing in kind of middle to front. But once they get there, they're just not really doing enough with it. And then at the back, they continue to be a little bit susceptible and can be got at quite easily. So you see with the goal, it's Elliot Watt, who didn't have one of his better games this season, with a kind of loose pass. It's deflected in the path of, I think, Graham Shinney, who knocks it downfield. But I paused when I went to watch this game back. I paused it at that moment, and you can see Johnny Katrumbis, the right fullback, is ahead of play, and you can see on the far side Emmanuel Longello, the left fullback, is ahead of play as well. So they've only got 2 defenders to kind of cover there, 2 centre-halves. Carlson kind of advances with the ball. The centre-halves are reticent to go out to him. And then Lucas Fadinger comes back to help out. And as I've said before, like the guy in the football, nice wee player. But defensively, I think him and Watt there is a lot of improvement. I don't know if they would improve, but there's a weakness there between the two of them, that it doesn't make you the most resolute, the most solidified of teams at the base of that midfield, where you're normally got at least one player who's good at protecting your defence. I don't think they've necessarily got either. They've got two very good footballers and are able to carry out this game plan, where the game plan is essentially, if we have the ball, you're not going to score. But when teams do get the ball in moments like this, there wasn't a whole lot of cover. And Carlson's shot, kind of maybe similar to what you were saying about the Tierney one. I thought Tierney one was just a kind of good finish, but I get what you're saying, and that the keeper's maybe not moving quickly enough across to get it. His position is maybe not that great. I think you can also say the same here about Callum Ward. It's a great finish it's a good finish from Carlson, but again, it's one of those ones. Could he do a wee bit better with, in terms of how he's moving his feet, where he's standing when the shots first went in? Quite possibly.
There's just something aesthetically not very good looking about both the goals, like that you mentioned there. Like, it's just like you watch it and you're like, that type of shot shouldn't go in. I don't know. It might be it's just been struck really well in both cases. I thought it's nice. I think we'll see Carlson score more goals like that this season, where he just picks up the ball, and if you don't close him down, he'll get himself into strong, good positions. He's got that instinct to do that, and he'll hit them. But I think, as well as the kind of positional aspects of what Motherwell got wrong with that goal, there was like an urgency to press him. You've got to take a chance and get in the guy's face, because otherwise, if you let him walk to 20 yards out from goal and let him have a ping, he's probably going to get very close to scoring.
But while sticking on Motherwell, just before we move to the second goal and talking about Aberdeen, I still felt like it's maybe a shame that I'm actually focusing on Motherwell's defence, because their actual defence played quite well in this one. Lazetic didn't really get anything out of them in his time in the park. Carlson, the Aberdeen could have changed their team a little bit. They changed it kind of back and forward between Armstrong being part of the midfield three and joining the attack, and then that meant that Carlson, when Armstrong was moving into the three in midfield, Carlson was then acting as like a second striker alongside Lazetic, and none of them got any change out of the Motherwell defence. Stephen Welsh had a very good game. Paul McGinn was a steady presence as well alongside him, and just got the goal, and was, I would say, the most impressive attacker as well. Slattery also had a decent game, but just, you can see with him, he sometimes plays in the middle of the park, and he sometimes plays on the wing. He was more on the wing in this one, but even when he's on the wing, he's just kind of got a lot of free movement to roam around and to kind of knit the play together and to enable them to move the ball as they do through the lines and to get into the final third. But that goal, I mean, Aberdeen, you've just got in front, you've not played that well, you're desperate for some sort of momentum, especially in the league, as Europe keeps disrupting you. And yet Europe might have been a factor, but it was a very sleepy performance in general from Aberdeen, and certainly sleepy at that goal.
That's a horrible goal to watch. I would say, like, from a defensive point of view, it's like so, like, the very, very basics of football concentration. You're defending a corner. I mean, you've seen it happen obviously at higher levels in this, the famous Divock Origi goal for Liverpool against Barcelona. So it can happen, like, but you've just scored. It's as you said, a pretty important game for them in terms of trying to get it back on track. Because when I saw that goal go in and it went 1-0, I thought, well, maybe Aberdeen are like starting to, turn a wee corner. They've had a couple of wins recently, and then you simply cannot concede a goal like that, like, so cheaply. It was. You can't really say much more about it. You're just falling asleep at a corner. Fair play to Slattery. He's the one that is awake and notices it. Just, to be honest, doesn't see the opportunity. He just happens to wake up about 10 seconds. Half a second before the defenders. You can see that he's not like, it's not like a situation where he's on the same wavelength as Slattery and then calling for it. Instead, it's just Slattery spots that he's kind of standing about with his hands in his pockets, but nobody's that near him, and then just wakes up and just in time to poke it home. But fair play, I like goals that show like a little bit of innovation, a little bit of creativity, and a little bit of quick thinking, I suppose. And so I enjoyed the goal, but it was at the same time, it must be tearing your hair out to concede it if you're feeling. It had the exact vibes of this sort of, and actually a couple of chances after it, this sort of stuff that gets a manager sacked. That's what it had the vibes of.
Yeah, and I think most Aberdeen fans are just kind of having enough now with how, because they were so poor, like to start this game. The first 30 minutes, just not in it at all. And yeah, you've just come back from a lengthy trip to Cyprus 3 days later, but then why are you only making 2 changes to your starting 11? And it's already kind of feeling like the 3 at the back, which initially gave them a bit of a boost and initially looked like maybe the answer to their troubles, with Thielen not changing things out of the kind of 4-2-3-1 that he'd, other than the Scottish Cup final, pretty much exclusively played ever since he became Aberdeen boss. It's now looking like that's not necessarily the right fit for the players either. And you're just coming back to the one common denominator in all of it is the manager. And the manager is just, he's not getting the best out of the squad. And yeah, like I say, to only make 2 changes, like they've got a very big squad full of some very well-paid players who have shown in flashes, mostly when they first started playing for Thielen, but after a month or two, then they went into the ship, shown in flashes that they are very good at this level, but he's just not, collectively, a lot of individuals not getting the best out of them. Try to think of positives to say with this performance, because there wasn't a whole lot. In fact, I'll stick with a couple of negatives before we move on to positives. Stuart Armstrong, probably his worst performance, certainly least effective performance since coming back to Aberdeen that I've seen so far. Gomafi was rubbish in the first half, taken off at half time for his own safety as well, because he'd been booked and was maybe a wee bit fortunate not to get a second yellow as well. But positives, I thought Jack Milne defended well, but when he had the ball, his distribution was quite poor from the back. Paul Vara, when he got on the ball, was decent, but that didn't happen anywhere near as much as Aberdeen would have liked. And Dylan Lobban, first time I've seen him, played right wing back, young Aberdeen fan. He looked decent enough. Not going to say it was a brilliant performance, but for somebody, for the must be the youngest player in that team, certainly better than a number of his more experienced teammates. And I saw an Aberdeen fan on Twitter, basically, I can't remember the GIF that was used along with the post, but it was like somebody crying, I think, and it was something along the lines of watching Dylan Lobban waiting for the inevitable downturn in performances once he's played under Thielen for more than a few matches. And that just seems to happen. These Aberdeen players look good, and then more things go on, their performances just drop. And yeah, like I've said, you look at the squad, look at the team, and think, how is this side still floundering about in the bottom half of the table? And there was what almost now kind of feels like a false dawn when they had that kind of turnaround. They got 3 victories out of 4. But who knows? It could still be Europe hamstringing them, as we've seen it happen to so many teams in the Scottish Premiership who are not, well, I was going to say not Celtic and Rangers. Rangers are usually fine in Europe and then terrible domestically, and Celtic's usually the opposite. But like whenever it's been Hearts or Aberdeen getting the group stages, and you've seen it for other clubs, Killie last season when they had to play the qualifiers in August, European football just seems to drain Scottish teams and seems to upset things. So who knows? Maybe that's the one last thing I think you can cling with Tulane this season is that once Europe's over, can they then go on a run? Because they should do, but it's not looking great at this point.
Well, they weren't in Europe from November to May last year, and it didn't seem to.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that too.
But we'll wait and see.
Right, Craig, I think that'll do us. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody for listening. We will be back again later this week with our usual lower league show. Until then, goodbye.